and we're ready.
Every week we get closer.
Fall camp fall camp day 5, I think now. Like this is great. Like this is peak football anticipation hours. Like I'm just fiending for August 31st against Notre Dame. Like this is what I want. I want it right now. That's where I'm at right now.
Fair. Did you watch any of the Hall of Fame game?
Of course not. Look, I love football, but that's not the football I care about.
That's fair enough.
I follow training camp. I follow football. I follow it all. Give me week 0 in Dublin. Give me week 1, Miami, Notre Dame. Let's go. That's where I'm at.
There we go. I like the energy.
Yep,
I like the. I actually did watch the Hall of Fame game, but yeah.
Really?
About a quarter and a half got through it, and then I was like, okay, that's enough of Trey Lance football.
Yeah.
He played solidly. He did play solidly.
He did.
I'm still a Trey Lance believer somewhere in there. But yeah, I mean, not too much to take away from that. But what there's stuff to take away from. Miami ranking kind of high to start the season. Not high. I mean, a pretty favorable ranking from the coach's preseason poll.
Coach's poll is out. Looks pretty, honestly, not the worst. I'm pretty happy with that, all things considered. It's a pretty, number 10 in the country. That they're giving us a high ranking. They're pretty high.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, you gotta really like it. Like, I mean, we talk about this week in, week out, just kind of building that respect and name in terms of college football. And like, I mean, if you start out high, like as the season moves on, I know this isn't the AP poll, it's the coaches poll, but you like where the league, the rest of college football looking at you favorably to start the season, and hopefully it moves on into the actual year itself. 10th, I'm not gonna lie, I was very surprised that
they put
it 10th. But you look at the teams nearby, Illinois, Arizona State, LSU, I can't be too shocked given the team that they have ranked around Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that piques my interest the most is if you look at who's Miami's playing this year. That's you got number 5 right there, week 1, Notre Dame. Number 16, SMU, week 7, and the number 17, UF. That's 3 teams right there that Miami's guaranteed to play. They're slated to play. And then potentially number 6, Clemson, who you might see in the ACC championship game. That's some good teams. They're giving Miami some credit. They're giving the ACC some love. I love that. I'm hoping, if the goal stays that Miami is the top 10 team in the country all year long, that's a hell of a season. So if they can, I like it. I'm excited for the AP poll next week. But look, I think number 10 is a solid spot for what we're looking at here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if the AP poll is similar and around that 10th spot, you're going to have a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. They might not have last year with Miami. As they ended the season 10-3, they didn't have that necessary leeway just because they weren't thought of not necessarily as highly. It's the highest they've been ranked in the coaches poll since 2018 or 2019. Sorry, I got to double check that. I believe it's 2018 when they came into the season ranked 8th. And so you got to hope you build off of this, akin to a strong season, and maybe even if you slip up, that's still in range for a playoff berth, really. So.
Absolutely, yeah. I keep thinking about it, that if Miami does win week 1 against Notre Dame, how awesome that looks already for the resume. The resume is the all important resume that you get a top 5 win off week 1, and then what? You have about 4 or 5 tougher games to end the season. If you win maybe 4 out of the 5, that's a playoff team right there, and that's honestly the goal at the moment. It's the goal right now. Make the CFP, make the ACC championship game, win it for the first time. That should be the goal. At least every season, it should be the goal this season. And with the way the team's looking, the 10 is a good number. You want to be better, but you're also pretty happy. You're happy that the committee's giving you that respect. Last year, Miami got respect in terms of the ranking, but there were times last year where you were like, oh, the fans not really in favor of Miami, not really loving them. And you can see why. It was very obvious. I mean, the team was carried by Cam Ward. It was. But they're getting love right now. They're getting support. They're getting that favor. And you kind of want to see that, and you're hoping that continues for years to come.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we say it every single week. Best thing that you can do is constantly build your program up. And signs like this, when you come to the season, top 10, even though there's so many shifting parts about this team that we've talked about, as this offseason is going on, between the receivers, obviously Carson Beck, the secondary being refreshed, all these different things that are moving, and then coaches still look at you at 10th overall. There's a lot of respect for what Chris Paul's building here and the program so far. So it'll be interesting to see, what a week 1 win might do for this Miami team if that were to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Hit it right there. But I mean, it's the coaches poll doesn't really mean a whole lot, but it's always nice when you're getting it shows how close we're getting the football. We're right there. We're right there. One more. There's football being played in this month. Legitimate football. We're getting excited.
Yeah, got to get excited. Real football being played this month. Still, I mean, shout out the Hall of Fame game. I did watch it, like I just mentioned, but real football, real Miami football. We're going to get to see it at the end of this month. Can't wait to see what that Notre Dame game looks like. And as we get closer, I mean, another thing that's recently opened is fall camp. Jaden, what are some of the early takeaways and things you're looking at from fall camp so far?
The first thing, obviously, you got to look at is Carson Beck. And one of the concerns that a lot of people had entering fall camp was, how's his health? How's the elbow doing? Towards UCL last December. Is that healthy enough? Is he ready enough for week 1 against Notre Dame? And from all the clips that I've seen, there's not a whole lot. Obviously, fall camp, take it with a grain of salt, please. Do not. It's not the end all be all. It will never be the end all be all. But from what you're just seeing, you're looking at a guy like Carson Beck, and you're seeing a healthy arm. You're seeing him make some good throws. Nice zip to the ball. He had a baseball injury throw, and seeing him kind of look almost the same as he did in Georgia, that's a good sign. That's a positive sign. Making some throws to C.J. Daniels. I saw Joshua Moore, Josiah Trader, guys like that were getting some reps, and that's all you want to see. You want to see some chemistry and some communication built between these guys. The other thing I saw the most, Miami loves their running back group. They see some juice in those guys. We talked about it earlier, how awesome Fletch is and how awesome, like the way that the team is built. But they're in love with Charmar Brown. They think that he could be probably the best RB3 in the nation. So one thing you're probably going to be expecting this season, so much RBBC. Who's going to be playing, what snaps, what downs. You're going to be seeing a healthy mix of Fletch, of Lyle, and of Chamar Brown. I think it's going to be one of Miami's biggest strengths all season long, and it will help Carson Beck significantly through the course of the season. And then I would say maybe among the younger guys, the one guy that stood out the most is Joshua Moore, the receiver. That true freshman, he's a dog. 6'4", great frame. He's shining, absolutely shining. He was shining during spring practices, during the spring game, and he's doing the same thing in the fall. And this is a guy that's fighting for a spot to get some legitimate reps this season. I can see it. Absolutely can see him being one of those wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5s, and he just builds his way up into maybe end of season wide receiver 3. If that happens, that's a legitimate player right there. That's a great build for Miami.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of interesting things that you just brought up there. I mean, we talked about when we looked at the running back group, we think it's really deep, and you think ideally you have a constantly churning through those guys throughout a game, and early on, you're very excited if that's the case. The what Miami's going to go through between, we already mentioned Fletch and Lyle, but also if Charmar Brown is a factor that we think he's going to be making that step up from the FCS level to the to the Power 5 level. All those different moving parts there. And then especially if you're looking at this receiver group, seeing the competition early on, seeing guys fighting for spots, you're going to see with, the three main freshman receivers between Dalen Upshaw, Malachi Toney, and, as you just mentioned, Joshua Moore, guys who are going to fight for some reps here, make it competitive, especially on, maybe they're not taking over the game necessarily in terms of reps, but, guys who can definitely work a role in, especially later in the season. If you see a lot of improvement from them, it'll be very interesting to see. I mean, it's you can't, like we said, you can't take too much away from fall camp. It's early on. It's guys, you're not seeing too much 11 on 11, guys getting really physical, trench work, but you'll like what you see when you see it. I mean, it was just a quick thing, but Hayden Lowe, 5-star guy who I saw competing really early on. Apparently he looks the part as a 5-star guy. Miami flipped. Looks the part, could definitely play another guy who could play a big role for Miami if they, throughout the season, rotate him in. Another key strength that we talked about is this D line and the depth there along with throughout everything. So it'll be very interesting to see as fall camp moves on, as Miami gets closer to the season. We are 27 days away from Notre Dame, and it'll be interesting to see how these young guys get involved, how Beck continues to look. I mean, right now we think the arms looks lively, looks healthy. Give it a few more weeks. How much more can that progress? A lot of things to be excited about just coming off of this first week of fall camp.
Yeah, Muhammad Torrey was another guy I saw, the linebacker, the transfer from Rutgers. Obviously, again, fall camp, you're not is what kind of how they're moving, how they're playing. And one thing I did see was that Muhammad Torrey, coming off another torn ACL, his second in a span of 4 years, is he was playing, he was moving the part, he was moving the way that he needs to. This is a guy that was in the Corey Heatherman system at Rutgers for a year, and that was his best season over there. So you're hoping that he can do some of the same thing. That's a guy that could be a key piece to that rotation. Again, another group that had some trouble last season, the linebacker group. If Muhammad Torrey can be a legitimate star on your team, I mean, this defense, as we keep talking about, this defense could be easily one of the better ones in the country, significantly better than they were last season, and it could start with Muhammad Torrey.
Yeah, like you just mentioned, the injuries are a concern with him, but a guy who's played in Corey Heatherman's system. Shout out to Falconer right here. He brought it up. Like if Corey Heatherman can do with guys like Torre and guys like throughout this entire defense kind of reshaping it and helping them get in line. I mean, you can see Miami go 11-1 or 12, potentially 12-0 on the high end. If this defense really steps up and becomes a top tier defense in all of college football, with what we think Corey Heatherman can do, and with what his track record shown he can do is really flip a defense and kind of take it to the next level. Guys like Torre, if he can stay healthy, using guys that in this system between the refreshed DB room with the youth and the experience in there, it could be very interesting. Another interesting piece for Miami, just that defense as a whole. I mean, early on, long way to go till the season, but you like what you see. You like what you see.
Yeah, you can't really have many complaints right now, and you're kind of just looking at it and being like, I need to see this week one. I want to know what I'm like. This is what I'm seeing in fall camp. All right, week one against Notre Dame. Let's see how they're doing it or what they're doing. But you're just hoping that what they do in fall camp, their install, what they're doing, everything progresses smoothly, positively. It doesn't lead to any injury. That's one of the bigger things always. If the team looks the part, if they play the part, but it does start with practice, and you're really hoping that these practices kind of help them as they progress as we get closer and closer to week one.
Yeah, absolutely. As just keep progressing week by week. Knock on wood, guys don't get injured as you kind of go on and as you ramp up the intensity in practices. And so you like to see the progression as things go on over time. And when you think about that week one of Notre Dame, it's like we get it, they're ranked 5 in the preseason polls, but they're starting a QB who really has very little experience. If this defense can come out blazing on fire, then you're going to like what you're going to see in that first week. I mean, the experience difference between the two QBs in that potential matchup could be very, very impactful for what we see from Miami. We'll get into the QBs and who Miami's facing later on in the show, but that's another thing to look at. Like Heatherman, experienced defensive coordinator, brings in a lot of defensive experience between the transfers in this room. If that group can get online week one and have the saying is defenses usually are on track earlier than offenses are.
Yep.
So you think about those type of things that could really help Miami take down Notre Dame in week one and kind of set the tone for the season with this defense.
Yeah, if the Heatherman system, if they do what we think they can do, they can really slow down a really young quarterback that has such an experience. But really, I'm thinking if they can limit Jeremiah Love, and I mean limit as in like 100 yards, that's could be a win. That should be a win. If you limit one of the probably the best running back in the nation to 100 yards, I don't know, 120. You can win that game. You can absolutely win that game because you have a true freshman who has playing in a hostile environment, week one, Sunday Night Football, like that. That's gonna be a trouble for him. So you imagine that Heatherman's gonna put the pressure on them early, make it hot, make them have to run the ball with Love, and if you can stifle the run in any possible way, you should be able to win that game. And Aaron Frazier actually makes a really good point, which we always talk about, is that one of the issues with last year's Miami team was their inconsistency and also their lack of knowing what to do. So many games, as we mentioned over and over again, they struggled with that department. Against Duke, there were tons of plays where you're looking at and you're like, what the hell? They don't know where they don't know where they are. They don't know what they're doing. They have to be coherent. They have to be a coherent system. They have to be with a bunch of guys that know at least what they're doing. If Heatherman's system can install these young guys into knowing what they're doing, that's at least a start. And then, as you said, defense is going to improve right away. And they're going to improve better than the offense. If they can show out week one, I have all the the hope and the potential in the world for how this team could play.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like Aaron just mentioned right there, it's like just knowing where you are, especially you can't give a young QB easy plays, easy completions, easy touchdowns, big explosive plays, because that's just going to get him in confidence and get him in a groove. And the worst thing you could do for a young QB is give him that confidence early on, because that just opens up the offense so much more. And it opens up, if the team's confident what they can do early on in the game and you're messing up and getting confusion. I'm getting confused constantly, like we saw Miami have so many times last year. Then it's a slippery slope in what ends up happening, what could end up happening in that week 1 matchup. So as capitalizing on the fact that it is a guy getting one of his first reps on the biggest stage in week 1, you gotta don't give him a thing. Don't give him, don't let him get in rhythm. Don't let them get moving. In terms of containing Jeremiah Love, he's probably going to get what he's going to get, but Miami has a really strong front seven from, what we think this group can be. And so you think you could contain him with that front seven group. Maybe you are a little bit smaller with the Heatherman system and what he wants to play, but guys like Zachariah Poyser being able to play in the box at a very high level, come down and fill the run gaps. As well, I think between all those different things you can see from Miami, it should, if you slow him down early on, make him lose confidence, and make him have to get away from the run game, then I think that week 1 in Notre Dame could really go Miami's way.
Yeah, absolutely. And we gotta mention this again with Falconer. I love the idea of the heliport. I don't think they're gonna implement it. I don't think so.
I'm Jaden's a lot less optimistic than I am. I think if we keep campaigning for the students to get the helipads to and from the games, I think we could really do something. I think stuff can really get happening. So people like you are what's going to get this thing done. And I every day, every week, I appreciate you campaigning for this because we need it. It needs to happen.
If you can lobby it to Joey Chavarria, you can lobby it to the athletics, whoever it is, to Mario, I'll be on board right away. I'll be the first one on that plane, on the helicopter. But I can't see it happening. They're not gonna bring 5 kids at a time to Hard Rock Stadium.
Look, some kids got money. Some kids got bread like that. Just a little side hustle to get people there. I'm just saying Look, you get money where you get money from. So I mean, if something you could explore it. That's all I'm saying. Ivory Falconer, we're gonna keep campaigning with you every single week. I'm on the phones. I'm talking to people. I'm telling them your story. I believe one day. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move forward here. Obviously we're finishing up our preview with the position group and everything, and we got to talk about the most important position on the field, probably the most important position in any sport, the quarterback. Quarterback room looks somewhat different this year. There's a couple guys gone, couple guys here. No Cam Ward, obviously, with the tremendous season he had last season, and in comes Carson Beck, redshirt senior, 6-year, entering. We don't know how much money Miami did give him to come to the U, but we do know that he did come to the U and he decided on it, and now he's here. This is a guy, from Jacksonville, committed to Georgia in 2019. Didn't really play much because he was backing up to Stetson Bennett and JT Daniels, but he got his first quarterback role 2023 with Georgia. And he right away becomes one of the top college football quarterbacks in the nation. His first season with the Dogs, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 3,900 yards. He was on the coaches all SEC second team. He was a finalist for the Manning Award. That's incredible numbers. He was a top SEC, probably the top 1 or 2 SEC quarterback that season. He was incredible. He was playing big games against big teams, against number 20 Kentucky, had almost 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a 51-13 win against UF, one of their biggest rivals, 315 yards, 2 touchdowns. Against number 10 Ole Miss, 306 yards, 2 touchdowns. Against Tennessee, 24 for 30, 298 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then in the Orange Bowl against FSU, 203 yards and 2 touchdowns. He only played maybe a quarter and a half. That's a guy that was one of the best players in the country. That's a player that you, as a Miami fan, you're saying, can we get that guy? Can that be the guy that can lead, put Miami over the top? Is he better than Cam Ward? That I don't know. Probably not. Definitely not. Actually, I know he's not better.
Yeah, that is a hard ask for a guy to come in.
He's definitely not better than Cam Ward. You're not expecting him to be better than Cam Ward. But his 2023 season was fantastic. And that's a season that Miami fans are really, really, really hoping that he can get. 2024, well, 2023, he did have a couple bad games. Let's not say he didn't. In the SEC championship game that took them out of the CFP after they were number 1 for 99% of the year, he was 21 to 29, had 1 rushing touchdown, but he had no passing touchdowns and no interceptions. A very nothing kind of game. And it took them out of the CFP. It was a tough loss to a very good Bama team. So, I mean, that's one game. And then you can look at Georgia Tech and Atlanta, 175 yards and 1 touchdown and 1 pick. Not the greatest game. And then against Vanderbilt on the road, 269 yards, touchdown, and a pick. Those are 3 games you can look at and be like, yeah, that's not going to lead to winning football. But you can say in his really good games, these were against some of the SEC's best. These are the games that you want your star quarterback to have the experience against. A game against Notre Dame can be similar to a game against Ole Miss or a game against UF. Those are the games that you're kind of looking at and be like, okay, I like that. I like that he has that experience. Teams like Notre Dame, that he doesn't have an experience like that. That's a positive. But then we mentioned 2024. 2024 was a very up and down year for Beck. He did play all of his 13 games, but he did deal with the injury concerns we mentioned earlier. That against Texas in the first half, the SEC championship game, goes for the Hail Mary, gets hit on his elbow, and ends up being a torn UCL, one of those baseball pitcher injuries, bad game, not what you want, obviously. And he caused him to miss the Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame. He had a very up and down season, as I mentioned earlier. He had 64% completion percentage. He had 28 touchdowns and 12 picks, so 6 more picks, only 4 more touchdowns. Just wasn't as good of a season. Just not, really what you're looking for out of a guy that you think is going to lead you to the promised land. You can look at some of those games really on the road as well. All of his really bad games, his worst being against Texas in the regular season, where he goes 0 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in a win. That game was entirely won on Georgia's defense in a Texas implosion. But that's not a game you want from him. Or you look at when he was against Ole Miss or even Kentucky in that game, they won 13-12, 160 yards and no picks and no interception or no touchdowns. Against Ole Miss, 186 yards and a pick and is probably his worst loss ever, losing by 18 to Ole Miss. So he's like a lot of ups and downs, and there's obviously obvious concerns with him. But you're looking at it and like, okay, I saw what he did in 2023. He had an incredible season. 2024, he's a little more down. It's a little more down, but he's playing in an easier conference, objectively an easier conference against objectively easier opponents. Can he put up better numbers because he's in the ACC? If he can, incredible. It'd be a great season for him. It'd be a season that will probably lead us to the CFP if he's somewhere along that 2023 mark. And I'm wondering, Shay, do you think that he can get to that 2023 mark?
I think it's doable. I think it is very doable. Like, you look at what he was able. I mean, you look at what Miami has around him. I get the receiver problem. The receiver is probably very comparable to what he had that last year at Georgia, given the fact that it's a lot of unproven guys, a lot of guys you're hoping steps up, not necessarily proven guys. Like, he's not coming into a system where where Miami had Restrepo. You have Sam Brown, you have Jacoby George, guys who have proven themselves to a little bit of extent, and then the guy who came out of nowhere, Elijah Royal last year. But what he does have is a very standout offensive line. Probably, if you're looking at the ACC in itself, probably the best in the conference from that standpoint. One of the best in the country from an offensive line standpoint, and a running game that you think you are projecting a little bit, like you are projecting that Fletcher and Lyle can take up bigger roles, but given what we've seen them that they can do, those are guys that you think can really have a stable running game that kind of allow Carson Beck to have play action, have more time to develop, have routes develop and stuff like that. So, and especially given what Shannon Dawson did for Cam Ward last year, as with the offense, calling this offense, leading this offense, getting aggressive when getting sometimes a little too aggressive at times. But overall, manning the ship from an offensive standpoint at a very high level. Like you think there's a lot of things that this offense can do to kind of help support Carson Beck and not make him into what he's not. Like he's not Cam Ward, but I think he's obviously not going to be Cam Ward. He's not going to run around and improvise a bunch. But what he can do is really sit in the pocket, pick you apart piece by piece, stay on time, stay on rhythm, hit the big play when you need him to. And I think Miami can definitely get that out of him and get something similar to what he had that year, 2023. And I think much better than what he did in 2024. Because obviously we said the numbers, 28 and 12. You're like, that's not that bad, but it's just in moments really. You didn't see what a guy. You didn't see the flashes of what people considered to be a potential first overall pick. Like he entered 2024 as the by far, I think the consensus number one overall pick. And then through the struggles last year, especially down the stretch and getting injured at the end of last year, you look at all those type of things and it kind of tanked his draft stock. So, and you actually look at it like he declared for the draft, and saw there wasn't a lot of interest, and that's why he ended up at Miami. And I think the confidence in Miami's program is another. Like they have the confidence that to look at what you did last season, see the dwindling interest from the NFL, and be like, this is where I want to go from a program standpoint. I think is another good thing for Miami. Like a guy thinks he can come here and become a number one overall pick again. Maybe not necessarily. It's tough. This draft class is probably going to be a lot better than last year's. But overall, like I really think Miami can help him get back to where he was in 2023 and get maybe not necessarily be a number one overall pick, but a potential first round pick.
Yeah, I do have a little concern though with the talent that will be like, not considering the talent that Miami has isn't good. It's great. The O-line's fantastic. But the talent that he had on that 2023 team, his best year, had Ladd McConkey, Chargers, incredible player for the Chargers right now. You have Brock Bowers, the offensive rookie of the year, probably the best tight end in the league, right? Playing at the best tight end in the league right now. And he had Kendall Milton, who's a current running back for the Bengals. And you had a couple of linemen that are currently in the league right now. So that's like 5 NFL ready guys. And that's guys that like they really contributed to what made Carson Beck had a fantastic season. 2024, from what I'm seeing, I only know a couple of guys, Trevor Etienne, who had a really bad year last year, and Arian Smith from the who's on the Jets right now. Those are the only 2 guys I know of from that draft class last season that are on the, that are in the league. That's not nearly as good, and it could have played a role in Carson Beck's regression potentially. So you're hoping that maybe Miami has a similar group of guys that they had last season, like that they had in 2023. Maybe if they have that kind of, if Elijah Arroyo can play a role similar to Brock Bowers, he will not be Brock Bowers. I'm not saying that. If he can play a similar role to him, if CJ Daniels can step up to a role where he can be similar to Ladd McConkey, not saying he will be, and then the running back group, I believe, can be Kendall Milton. And the O-line can be those guys. So it's up to the receivers and the tight end group. Can they help Carson Beck the way that Carson Beck then can help them? Because we've seen when Carson Beck has the talent around him, he can be a very good player. If he doesn't have talent around him, a lot more shakier, can throw more picks. There's definitely more concern there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, especially like you see this constantly with guys who are very reliant on being on schedule, in a rhythm, running the offense through the pocket, is like if they're off schedule because guys aren't where they need to be, guys are getting jammed up and can't get into their routes necessarily. That can cause a lot of problems for a guy like Carson Beck. So I think a lot of it will have to be on Shannon Dawson to kind of scheme guys open, get Carson Beck in a rhythm, and help this offense move early on. And then, once he's in a rhythm, then you can kind of go, then you can maybe take more shots, a lot more like complicated concepts, stuff that's going to take longer to develop, because you just want to get him in a rhythm, especially early on in the season, to kind of set the tone for what this year is going to be. Like I think you don't want it to be the year of Tyler Van Dyke, that last year where it was just Miami got ultra conservative with what their offense is going to be, and there were times. I mean, we'll talk about him later too, but when Emory Williams is sometimes the QB, where the Miami gets really conservative, and it's just check downs, bubble screens a million times, and then it's very, not necessarily you have to be fun to watch all the time, but it's very rough to watch when it looks like you don't really believe in your quarterback to that level. and I think Miami can really help Carson. I think Shannon Dawson was really going to be the key factor in helping these new moving pieces kind of come together alongside Carson Beck to give him a much better chance of succeeding than he did last year in Georgia. I think all the receivers are going to have to do their own part because, like you mentioned a guy like Arian Smith, a million drops last year. That's why he
Yep.
fell despite the crazy speed he has. So I think guys being reliable and being consistent is going to be very important. But I think most importantly, it's Shannon Dawson moving these chess pieces around to their best ability. That's going to be so critical for Miami.
Yeah, and when we talk about, I mean, you're right that right now we need Carson Beck as probably another big concern is him to stay healthy. I know that his UCL injury was kind of a freak injury, but you need him to stay healthy. And I say you need him to stay healthy because you're concerned or you have issues or we have worries with the rest of the quarterback room, especially the battle for QB2 with Emory Williams probably leading the charge right now, the redshirt sophomore. Great dude. Love Emory Williams. His true freshman season, he had to come in after the Tyler Van Dyke injury, and then him. I wouldn't call it a benching, but you could call it a benching. Where he had to come in against Clemson when Van Dyke was hurt. He got the start. He goes 24 of 33, one touchdown, one interception, 151 yards. They won that game 28-20 in a double overtime victory. But if you watch that game, as we mentioned earlier, Shannon Dawson did not rely he didn't really give Emory Williams the keys at all. He gave him the training wheels at best. He was throw a lot of short passes, a lot of quick throws, nothing. He was never going to try to make a deep ball throw to try to get a big play touchdown. He was never going for that. He never tried it. Just never happened. And it was scary. It was not fun watching him play against Clemson because you were a little worried if he does throw a deep ball, will he just throw a pick? You were worried about some of those things in that game. They ended up winning that game. Would have probably been one of my favorite games that Miami had won. And then against FSU, number 4 team in the country, really tough game in Tallahassee. 8 of 23, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. One of those touchdowns was that play to Jacoby George. Probably should have been a pick, but it wasn't. Counts as a touchdown. And I'll give him credit that he did make the incredible play, diving to get that first down, breaking his arm. That's true grit right there. Absolute dog for making that play and getting the first down. Probably made my FSU play its toughest game all season long. With that dive and that attempt, even that game. Yeah, the 8 completions was really bad. He was pretty bad in that game. The defense kind of kept them in for the most part. So you're looking at Emory Williams. You're like, okay, can 2024 maybe he takes a little, maybe he can develop a little bit, take a little step forward. He backed up Cam all season long, and then he played the entire second half of the Pop-Tart Bowl. Gave Mario and Shannon Dawson like, okay, this is who we got going forward. Let's see what he's got. He went 5 of 14 for 26 yards and a pick. It was there was no doubt about it. Other than saying it was one of the worst performances you'll see in a game from a quarterback. It was bad. It was bad. It gave Miami the reason to enter the portal and say, okay, now we need a quarterback. And they attempt for here and they attempt for all these guys and they get Carson Beck. They had to do that because of what they saw from Emory Williams in the Pop-Tart Bowl. It was bad. It was nothing short of like one of the worst performances I've seen in a while. So you're hoping that 2025 Emory is continuing his development, that he's able to, do better when he's under pressure, that he's able to do things other than short passes, that he maybe can show off whatever arm talent he has. Maybe he can, you're hoping that in the event that Miami's blowing out a team, maybe you're looking at Emory and saying, okay, you play Bethune-Cookman. What are you going to do? Are you going to play a good game? Whatever. But you're saying, what if Carson Beck gets hurt? Can this guy really step up and be a legitimate player in an ACC game against, I don't know, Louisville, Virginia Tech? Can he be one of those guys? And that's where you're starting to say, okay, I have a little bit more concern of this guy. I have a little bit more that we have to trust in the running back group significantly more. We have to trust in the defense significantly more. That's my concern with Emory Williams. I know some people are still high on him. I think he's a great dude, but I don't know. I have a little more. Well, I'm very hesitant on saying that Emory Williams will automatically be the QB2, will be a guy that can easily fill in for Carson Beck if he were to go down.
Yeah, there is that necessarily where you are concerned, but I think if him as a spot starter role, I think has been he does what he needs to do. I think he managed the game well. If you need to be conservative, it does that, and especially if Miami's defense is a lot better this year, like that that's something that's serviceable for maybe a game or maybe two, especially like in that middle of the season lull if you're playing a team like Stanford or if you're playing a team, one of the lower teams in the ACC, or if it's Bethune-Cookman you're necessarily playing, he's going up against. So those are the type of things, where I think Emory is very serviceable at. Like, obviously, I don't want him playing week one against Notre Dame, and obviously, if it's the ACC championship, I'd be worried about him going against a team like Clemson, stepping into that. But I think overall, looking at what he can do, I think he's a good backup, and I don't. Unless it's like a very long stretch of time, I don't necessarily have too much of a worry about him being a starter. Like if Carson Beck is down for maybe a half or maybe a game necessarily, like I think he can definitely step into that type of role. It's just like those elongated stretches of him playing where you get a little bit concerned, where you get concerned for for what he can be as a starter. And I think especially you want him to be the backup, and you're rooting for him to be backup a little bit just because like you look at the depth of this QB room and it's a lot of guys you want to kind of keep redshirted. Not a lot. I mean, the main guy everybody talks about it is Luke Nickel. You want to make sure he's redshirted. Everything I've heard about him, everything I watched him a little bit in the spring game, he flashes, and you're like, okay, this guy could definitely step in as a starter. Maybe not. Maybe if Emory really does prove himself, whether it's not next year or the year after. So like, I think I'm very fine with Miami's depth in this QB room as long as like you don't have to test it for long periods of time. Like I'm fine if it's just a game or two where guys have to start in the spot. But like long term, obviously, if Carson Beck was out for 5-6 games in the middle of the season, I'd be a little worried. But
yeah, okay, that's fair. I guess that's fair. I just have some concern if that he has to play. Maybe Carson Beck goes down with some injury and Emory Williams is thrown into the fire against FSU. And in Tallahassee again. I have a little concern that maybe he doesn't play to the level that you need him to, and he kind of falls back to what he did in the Pop-Tart Bowl or what he did last year against FSU.
mm-hmm.
So I just have a little bit more of that concern at times. So I'm looking at what
I know,
Kendrick
me too. Yeah.
I haven't been to training camp practice yet. I will at hopefully in the next couple weeks. I have not heard this. I saw a couple clips of him a couple of days ago. I did not see any clips of him today. I actually didn't hear his name at all today. I'm not going to throw in any rumors. I'm not going to start any rumor mill at all. I'm hoping he's healthy. I did see a couple tweets about his potentially a knee. I'm not going to throw in any rumors if he's hurt or not. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, very fair. I was looking too. I didn't see anything confirmed yet. So if there's something there, I think we'll probably hear it. But as of right now, I think there's a difference between guys being hurt and like injured. So like maybe if it's a little soreness or uncomfortability, then it's like limit a guy for a practice necessarily. But I haven't seen anything to say to really concern me about his long
health. The other thing I know one thing is that Mario Cristobal is very specific about the clips that he has the media show. Maybe Mario was telling them not to show anything or not to, because I'm sure Mario would have been asked a question about his health. I'm sure he would have if there was something to be concerned about. There's probably just a world where he didn't show up. Maybe he was just with the athletic trainers, or they weren't allowed to film JoJo Trader. That could also be a potential thing. That they're very specific about what you can and cannot film. So we don't know, and I'm not gonna try to speculate what's happening if he's healthy, if he's not. You hope he really is, because he's gonna be a crucial part of this team this
very
season.
crucial part. And kind of Falcon are kind of echoing our point going back to Carson Beck is in this depth. This is what you hope. You hope that this is the main part you're going to see the depth of this QB room get tested. Thank you for 305, by the way. But defense is good. Beck is good throughout most of the game. And then that fourth quarter, send whoever you want in. Send Emory in for the quarter. Send Judd in for the quarter. Send Luke Nickel in for the quarter. And I think you're very fine with that. And another guy I'll mention just to kind of just look at the future of this QB room and maybe a guy who can look at coming in next year is Darion Coleman, 3-star out of Orlando. He's looked solid. I mean, I looked at some of his clips. The ball zips out of his hand. Like it literally is just a flick of the wrist, and that thing is going. So I think you could be excited about him. He's very small, only 6 foot. I think he's listed at 165 according to 24/7 currently. So a little bit of size concerns, but as a future depth piece and maybe potential starter one day. Like the ball really, he does have a lot of juice in his arm. Like it is a very the arm's lively. So I think another guy to potentially get excited about moving on to the future, even if Emery or Luke Nickel isn't the necessary answer. I think Miami is going to. I mean, you're always going to look at QBs in the future, and I think there's always the world that Miami does explore the transfer route again. I mean, it's been success. If it's successful 2 years in a row, there's always a chance that Miami does it a third year and then gets another highly touted transfer recruit like they've done the last 2 years. So there's a lot to look at with this QB room and a lot to be concerned about. I will be fair in the case of Carson Beck is injured, which doesn't look like it, but if there's injury concerns with this QB room and there's long-term the backups that play for more than one game, you're going to be concerned anyways. Because I think anytime your starting QB gets hurt, the backup's a backup for a reason. So there's not a lot of teams who can go into a long stretch of games with their backup QB and expect to succeed. And I don't think Miami's going to be any different than that. But I think in spots, I think Emery can play well, and I think in terms of the future, whether it's Luke Nickel, whether it is Emery, maybe he does actually prove himself to be the guy for the future, or if it's a guy like Darion Coleman. I think I like this Miami QB room in terms of the depth behind it, just in case in a spot Carson Beck has to be out for whatever reason.
Yeah, there is also Judd Anderson, the redshirt freshman. The only thing, because I don't know much about him, I do know that he played in the wing T offense his freshman year of high school and then transferred to a different high school, this one in Georgia. He was a very good two-way athlete. He's also huge. He's 6'6".
I've heard about it. Yeah, he is a big guy from what I've heard. So
yeah, so I don't know much about him as a player, but I do know that I don't know that I don't know, maybe he's another guy that you could be looking at and be like, oh, maybe the QB2 battles between Judd Anderson and Emory Williams. That could be a potential thing. I would say, you were talking about it, that the guy that what I'm hoping Miami can do is that they can develop Luke Nickel as the guy, that he could be the guy as for years to come. If he has a very good, and this might take a little bit, maybe you redshirt him this season, and then maybe he's developing under someone else next season. Then you're hoping his redshirt sophomore season he gets the keys. If that happens, I'm very interested to see what Luke Nickel can do. I'm very high on him. I thought he was fantastic in high school, watching his clips, and I think he's got the potential to be a very good player. So you have I think it's a good quarterback room. I think it's a fine quarterback room. But if Carson Beck were to go down, there could be concerns. If he were to go down for a large portion of the season, I have significantly even more concerns. But at this point, who doesn't, right?
yeah,
If Cade Klubnik were to go down for Clemson fans would be saying their season's over.
exactly.
So it's no different for Miami that if Carson Beck were to go down, you would be saying your season doesn't look like a CFB season, that it looks like just a regular 7-5, 8-4 bowl game season.
Mm-hmm. And then even if it was the case, I think there is the hope that if you knock on wood, like obviously you don't want anybody to get hurt, but it is in any case like that, it is a kind of a learning season at that point where you'd hate for it to go that way for Miami, but like you can learn about the depth of this QB room. So I think either way you look at it, there always is a bright side to things. But obviously the hope is, and I think the expectation is for Carson Beck to be healthy. But if there are some complications there, you do get to test out this depth in QB room and the potential future of it after this year. So, but I think it's time to get to the fun part of it. We have a tier list that we are going to do about teams that Miami is facing and their QB rooms. Obviously, we think very highly of Carson Beck, but there are a lot of QBs that there are a lot of QBs that we are going to have to look at in terms of Miami facing this year and the ACC and see where Carson Beck stands up in terms of comparison of them. I think easily you probably have him high here. You want to look at all these different QBs here, but we'll start off just by kind of looking at the teams Miami's going to face, and then we'll kind of shift off into a few other people as we kind of go on through it all. So, but I'll start off first with the biggest two names here. Obviously, we're going to have Carson Beck here, and we'll start off. Jaden, where do you want to put him?
Among ACC quarterbacks, I would say A, maybe.
A, okay, solid start.
I would say A because if you're looking at all the quarterbacks in the ACC this season, I'd put maybe 2 or 3 guys above him.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you're a top 5 quarterback in the ACC, maybe that's like an A tier. I don't think S tier. S tier to me believes that you're one of those top quarterbacks in the nation that you may even like potentially first round pick kind of level of a very good player. I'll put A tier. I think it's a solid tier for him.
Yeah, I think that's very fair because you're also what you're looking for is a bounce back. So obviously, there's not necessarily things set in stone right now with Carson Beck. So you are a little bit of projecting to see if he can get back to 2023 form. I think there is a world where by the end of the season we are saying he's an S tier, but I think A tier is very safe and I think fine for now.
Yeah, I'm at like an A minus B plus right now, and then
Gotcha.
as
Okay.
the season goes forward, like that could be like maybe an S if he
Yeah,
plays
a
well.
high A, a low S, something like
Yeah,
that. I think
yeah.
if he can really get back to where he was in 2023, which you hope if you're a Canes fan, I think that's very fair. But next up, we have Cade Klubnik, kind of the biggest name in the ACC in terms of QBs. I think this is pretty easy. Jaden,
Yep.
where do you have him?
S tier. I think
S
this is
tier.
pretty fair.
Yeah.
With considering how well he was playing last season in a college football season with Clemson. I think it's got to be him. 30. I mean, he's probably in my eyes. I think he's the top 5 for the Heisman. Even that's how good of a player I think he will be. I'm very happy we're not playing him, and if we were, we would be in the championship game. He was very good last season. 25 touchdowns, 3 picks. Or no, it was, sorry, 36 touchdowns, 6 picks. Very
Yeah,
good.
25 to 3 in just ACC games last
Yeah,
year,
yeah.
including the ACC championship game right there. Kind of dominated the conference. Only really struggled against Georgia. It was only really bad game was the opener against Georgia, but a real dual threat QB, real rushing threat as a quarterback, and if you're looking at this, the Clemson is a staple year in year out, and he's kind of developed over the years with Clemson and really stepped into a full role. And that 36, like I said, 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, another 7 TDs on the ground, another 400 yards. You look at he earned 146 of 183 votes for ACC Player of the Year. He's gonna have his go-to weapon with Antonio Williams still there. I think this S tier is probably the most likely thing he's going to end up being, unless something really bad happens and he slips very far. But you really like what he can do for Clemson, and probably the best. He's probably the best QB in the conference if you look at it right now.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And then next up we have Chandler Morris. Chandler Morris for Virginia, who is taking who transfer QB, I believe. Let me just double check on that. But he is a transfer. Actually, wait. I'm going to stick with teams Miami's going to play this year.
Okay.
I'm going to go next to Kevin Jennings of SMU.
Yeah.
Kevin Jennings, we saw what they did we saw what he was able to do at SMU last year, lead them to a college football playoff berth. Probably the one. I mean, very solid year for SMU's first year in the ACC. Where would you put him right now?
I'm between probably a high A tier, maybe a low S tier right now. I would probably,
Really?
yeah, I would put high A tier. Let's put high A tier.
High
And
A tier.
yeah,
Okay.
I say that I actually think he is better than Carson Beck, at least entering the season.
Mm-hmm.
He was fantastic for SMU, one of their key players. The system that they had between him as a dual threat with Rashad Smith as a running back was very fun to watch. He was, I mean, the 11 picks obviously was his biggest problem. But he was incredible for them, and his CFP game against Penn State was pretty bad. But you did watch him play, and he had a great game against Clemson, a great
Yeah,
game.
I mean, like big comeback that SMU was tried to force there to kind of fight to the very end against Clemson for that ACC championship. So, I mean, I was thinking B just because the interceptions are a little bit high.
Yeah,
but also like
I see him.
His passing numbers and his overall numbers could be kind of bumped down a little bit just because SMU, if you look at a lot of their games last year, they kind of ran roughshod over a lot of the teams they played. So
yeah, I see him honestly a little bit better in my eyes than Beck, just from what I saw him. Also, what he can do as a dual threat that Beck doesn't have.
That's fair.
I'm a little bit higher entering the season on him.
But do you think he's gonna potentially lose a little bit just because he's gonna lose a guy like Brashard Smith, who was second in receptions?
I think
for them.
SMU is going to regress this season. I don't think they're going to be as good as they were last season, but I also still like Ken Jennings. Entering the season, I like Ken Jennings. I do think
Okay.
SMU will not have as good of a season they did last season. I'll be pretty blunt with that.
Yeah, that's fair. I think they had a kind of breakout into the league. I mean, into the conference last year type of year, and so
Yep.
it is going to be hard to kind of replicate that. But moving on, we have a transfer QB here with Miller Moss that we're going to get to. So I'm trying to make sure I have the right person here before I grab him. But yeah, Miller Moss was kind of a highly touted guy for a little bit at USC. Played, he had some up and downs last year. He's going to transfer over to Louisville, where if you look at it, a guy like Tyler Shuck became a second round pick because of his play over at Louisville. I was thinking B or C to kind of think of.
Yeah, I was thinking more like a low B would be where I would put him.
Low B for Miller Moss. Yeah, that's
I
fair.
like his potential. I really enjoy.
Yeah.
He was so good in high school, and him being so bad at USC really, obviously is not ideal. But what you did see from, I thought he was really going to be an incredible player. But one thing that does help is Louisville's got some good talent around them, and he's got a coaching staff, good offensive group. I do expect them to have a pretty decent season that was maybe not better than Tyler Shuck. I actually thought Tyler Shuck had a really good season, but I don't think it will be as good as Tyler Shuck did. But maybe he takes a little bit of a comeback, maybe a nice change of scenery from USC to Louisville might be beneficial for him. The 9 picks was his biggest thing. He was pretty bad. USC also had a terrible offensive line. He was getting eaten alive in that pocket in the Big Ten.
Yeah, a little bit of a rough jump into the Big Ten for USC last year. So you're gonna wait and see. You think he can bounce back with a little bit of easier competition in the ACC. A better offensive, not necessarily a better offensive system because we know what Lincoln Riley can do in terms of work magic for QBs, but a little bit better in terms of you're gonna play a little bit less, worse defenses. And you look what Louisville was able to do against Miami last year. I know Miami's defense was really bad, but they put up, what was it, 40? Was it high 30s or 40 points, something like that last year?
Shootout, absolute shootout.
It was a shootout. Like, it required Miami. It required everything on Miami last year, as pretty much every game did. But that Louisville offense could be very explosive, and so maybe a little bit of bounce back year you could see from Miller Moss if he can get going with that Louisville system. Next, let's see, who do I want to pick out here? Let's go with I'm just gonna toss, just because he's a complete unknown, Ricky Collins here for Syracuse, another guy coming out of LSU, really didn't play at all, just because I'm actually gonna, just to be a little bit nicer, I'm gonna call this the unknown tier, just because complete unknown, guy didn't really play at LSU, and there's a little bit of QB battle between him and let me just double check on that. Syracuse QB battle, but there's a little bit of QB battle between him and another and Steve Angeli, who transferred from Notre Dame. So, but as of right now, for a guy who hasn't started, a guy who hasn't played yet, I think it is only fair to. Oh wait, sorry, let me not.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. He's definitely someone that you have no clue what you're getting out of. I know Syracuse is going to have a pretty good team. I love what Fran Brown is doing over there. I not totally sure how well he will play within their system because we don't know. Just so we don't know.
Yeah, it's just we don't know for now. But if he is the starter, if it's Angeli, we'll see how that goes for Miami when they play Syracuse. I mean, you look at what Syracuse was able to do with Kyle McCord last year. I mean, he had a phenomenal year. Unbelievable year in terms of numbers he was able to put up. So maybe something happens like that for Ricky Collins. Obviously, McCord had played college, played in the Big Ten previously. So there's a little bit more of experience with what McCord's doing to what you're going to ask Ricky Collins to do. So it'll be interesting. But he has the tools, and you want to see what he can do with the offense that was as explosive as Syracuse was last year. And next up, let's get to Tommy Castellanos. Ooh, I know. LSU here. I mean, not LSU, FSU. Sorry about that. FSU. Tommy Castellanos. Where do we find him? Really explosive runner who, I mean, you look at the numbers under Bill O'Brien, they just stopped using his legs last year as a runner, which it took down It's weird because you look at what he did at Boston College. His big year in terms of on the ground, we had over 1,100 rushing yards, came with 14 interceptions. He had 18 touchdowns and 5 interceptions last year, but they completely eliminated the running game out of his legs. So where do you think would be fair to put Tommy Castellanos?
Probably I gotta put C tier. I gotta put C
C
tier.
tier.
Yeah, and I'm only saying that. I mean, I thought he was actually pretty fun at Boston College because well, one of the games I remember the most was how well he played against FSU
Yeah.
with BC. It was probably one of his better games of his career. The where was he before Boston College? Was he
I believe. Oh, sorry, I'm blanking on it. Let me pull it up really fast.
because wherever he was that year before that got him to BC was a pretty solid year for him, and I did like what I saw from him. So
UCF.
yes,
He was
UCF.
at UCF.
He had a pretty solid year at UCF, and that's probably why that's how he got to BC. And I thought the season was good. He wasn't utilized in the way that you wanted him to. I have no idea what's in store. FSU to me is like the biggest question mark ever. They're like
Yeah, you
they're
just see how awful they
like
were last year. Hopefully they're awful again. No offense to them, but yeah,
yeah.
and so you're a lot in the air for them, but
So
it'll be interesting to see.
I mean, do I think he's better than DJU? Yes. Is DJU probably the lowest bar you can probably set?
That is an extremely low bar for him to clear. But I mean, hey, you look at what the guy can do with the legs. If FSU can utilize that, could be something interesting, especially for what Miami. Hopefully it'll be different. But you saw what Miami struggled. We'll get to Haynes King later, but you see what Haynes King was able to do against in that running QB offense was able to do against Miami last year. And what Kyron Jones to a little bit of an extent was able to do against Miami. So obviously you think it will be different defensively, but a guy who can be explosive with his legs, it'll be interesting to see if FSU gets the most out of that.
Yeah.
And now moving on from Mr. Castellanos, let's go to Kyron Jones, a guy who, his numbers weren't flashy, but when you looked at Miami, you looked at that game Miami had against sorry, let me make sure I have the right pick picked out. Okay, there we go. Where's Kyron Jones? Yeah, you see what Miami had to do to overcome that. Was it complete? Was it incomplete? I don't know. Miami won the game, but Kyron Jones really gave them everything they had. I'm feeling his production really wasn't that high is the really problem. And you're going to lose Bashaw Tutin, you're going to lose Jalen Lane if you're Virginia Tech. Two guys who were drafted who were pretty big for them. So I'm thinking C or D here.
I'm thinking C as well. I'm going to say C, but because C is a little bit generous, but also based on I thought that last season he had his moments where he was good. I believe the Vanderbilt game he played was a pretty decent game for him. I think they actually lost that game. And then the Miami game, he played very well. But you're right. Losing Tootin and losing Lane are going to absolutely devastate Virginia Tech. Those are two absolute dogs they had, and it kind of worked. They kind of meshed well with Castellanos, or not Castellanos, with Jones. And one thing that what Virginia Tech did the best at us, they ran the hell out of the ball against us so well, played so well in the run game. And that's honestly what Drones will do. Drones is similar to Castellanos in that he will use his legs significantly, and he's not very good as a passer. I would say he's kind of that. You can call it the Justin Fields build, if you will, of a guy who's can have a good arm, but he runs a lot more than the average quarterback will.
Yeah,
So I'd say a low C is probably fair for him. I was high on him last season. His number, the counting numbers were not very good, so I'm okay with a low C.
Yeah, low C is I think is very fair. And then moving off of him, where would you want to go? You want to go to Pitt or NC State? Where would we prefer to go?
Let's go to NC State here.
Okay, we're talking to CJ Bailey. I was looking up, doing some research on him. PFF's, sorry, I want to make sure I get the name right. Dalton Wasserman called him one of the most underrated players in the ACC. And I kind of, listening to him talk about it, I kind of get why a little bit. A guy is 6'6", big, strong QB, can run the ball, make guys miss, but he has some issues. The guy is a turnover machine, second highest turnover-worthy play rate in the ACC at 4.6, 8 fumbles last year. So a little bit of a mixed bag, but if you can kind of get him consistently, 17 TDs, to 7 interceptions, 5 on the ground. Where would you have CJ Bailey?
Maybe probably in a B tier. I would say B
B
tier.
tier.
So
Okay.
I say that probably because I watched a little bit of NC State football, mainly because one of their tight ends, Justin Jolie, shout out Iona Prep, great player, great tight end. But he NC State to me was pretty underwhelming last season. I thought that they were going to be one of the better teams in the country, and they had a couple so bad games. The Tennessee game was brutal for them. But where you mentioned about the underlying numbers, it's the lack of turnover rate, the fact that he probably is one of their better. Like if you look at the guys that fit that run heavy build of like, he runs a lot, but he also can throw the ball pretty well. He's probably one of the better ones in the ACC at that kind of that role. So I think that he could be a pretty decent player for NC State. I think B is fine. I think he's right next to Miller Moss. Maybe I think that's pretty fair for him.
Yeah, a guy you're projecting a little bit with. It is his, it's his
Yeah,
second for full year as a starter.
it's a potential
Um,
thing. There's a potential
and a little bit of
aspect.
a potential thing, and we'll get to potential later, especially when we talk about, that guy over there. But yeah, you're projecting a little bit, but I think you like what you've seen if you're NC State, and it'll be interesting to see, how he plays against Miami, especially going into his second year. And so following that up, we're gonna go to Pitt. I believe our last ACC opponent I'm going to mention here before we get to actually one other starter, and then actually I'll go to Stanford first. Elijah Brown. I'm going to toss him into the unknown section.
Yep.
Guy only had 2 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in his little limited play. You don't really know what you're going to get yet necessarily. Fairly unknown. Didn't really play a lot. I'm not going to project necessarily entering his first year as a starter. So there's you're waiting to see on him. You're waiting to see.
All you do know is that he does play for Stanford, and then that's not a great sign already for their offense.
Yeah.
No offense.
So, little bit of concerns over there for Stanford as a team. Wasn't very good. So, we'll see what he can do for Stanford over there. But I will get to the last player, 17-7, Eli Holstein. What do you think he could do for Miami potentially? I mean, against Miami.
Well, this is the last game of the season, I believe, right, Pitt?
I think it is very late in the season.
So
I believe it is.
Where are you thinking here? I know you were doing a lot of research on him, and he had that big leg injury last season.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm feeling C as well.
Okay.
I want to just double check on. Well, actually, sorry. I want to double check on where Miami plays Pitt.
Well, so I'm looking at some of his
November.
numbers.
It is late November. So,
but before his injury, I'm looking at some of these games, and they weren't really anything special. Against Cal at home, 133 yards, 2 picks. Okay. Syracuse at home, a very good Syracuse team, as we know, after what happened. He had 108 yards, 2 touchdowns. Passing, not really a guy that you're saying I'm very afraid of him and maybe as a passer, just based on counting numbers. And then the rest of the numbers are not as fantastic either against.
And you are a little bit concerned of what his little bit of an injury risk between the leg injury he suffered.
Yep.
So he had a little bit of concerns there.
Him from running.
I think you look at his early season numbers. He was the first 5 weeks of the season. You look at his numbers to start off, and he was 15 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. It was against some weaker competition, but a guy who can really, you can't. I wouldn't necessarily sleep on him fully. I'm going to put him
I'll give him credit for what he did against West Virginia. Obviously their top rival. 21 of 30, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and very good in a rivalry game against your most hated team. That's pretty good. Other than that, I'm looking at his games against like very solid teams. I mean, Cal's they weren't a very good team. I know that took Miami to the end, but to have a game like that, or even Syracuse 108 yards, these aren't the numbers that you're saying they're eye-popping numbers.
No, they're definitely not. And you really look at that second half of the season, and he really fell off towards this, and might have been a little bit of injuries that played a factor in there. But he's the guy who can make stuff happen with his legs. Very prototypical, stay in the pocket QB, but who can make stuff happen with his legs.
Yeah, but it's also a guy who had 5 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in ACC play.
Yeah. So a little bit of up and down. Another guy, if you're Pitt, you're projecting a little bit to see if he can take another step. I believe last year was his first year as a starter, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, another guy who was a true freshman last year who kind of made stuff happen here and there. But once again, another guy we're projecting with. If we're looking at it.
Yeah.
So that is the end of ACC play. We do have some other ACC QBs here. Not necessarily all of them very interesting. No offense, but just for fun, we won't play this demon. But where do you have Haynes King?
I'm just very afraid of Haynes King, honestly.
Yeah.
I might just give him an A or a B just because of how afraid I am of him.
Okay, yeah, we'll base it off of against Miami.
Against Miami, he's one of the best players in the nation. Let's be real here.
So we'll toss him up here.
No. In reality, probably a B tier.
B tier, solid guy, especially the way Georgia Tech plays football. They are physical, and he is the engine to that offense.
The way he played against Miami, banged
with
up
a broken arm, broken shoulder, whatever it was, but
they were like, oh, he won't be able to throw that much.
Yeah.
Won't be able to do this. Won't be able to do that. He had an incredible running and passing game against Miami.
Very efficient,
but he scares me every time I watch Haynes King play. I'm afraid of Haynes King. I'm afraid of the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. I never want to see them ever again. It is a blessing that we don't play them this year.
Yeah. It is. Thankfully, that will not be. There might be several killers to the season, but Haynes King and the Georgia Tech offense will not be a killer for Miami this year. And so I'll wrap there. Like I said, there's some other guys over here. Another guy you can look at potentially if you're looking at other teams. Chandler Morris from Virginia. He kind of led the American last year in pretty much everything you could think about. But Miami won't be playing him. Probably similar here. Toss him in the B tier just because that is a guy who Miami does end up playing at some point.
Same with Duke's Darian Mensah, another guy.
Duke's Darian Mensah. That is a good shout.
He's a good player. He's a very good player. Great. He had a great season at Tulane. Duke is going to be a good team. I'm okay with saying Duke's going to be a good team. I'm not very worried, thankfully, because we don't play them. But I mean, he's a pretty good player. He's probably better than what they had with, I can't remember his name, the Texas guy, Malik Murphy. So
Malik Murphy,
and they also lost a lot of guys. Their team is built a lot on transfers, so they're a much more veteran team. So I'm not really worried about it.
Would you think B or maybe what are we thinking here?
I would say maybe B.
B? Okay.
Yeah.
I
would, if anything, if we were to rank the tiers, he's probably one of the higher guys in the B tier.
Yeah, okay. So we'll slide him kind of up. Would you have him above Miller Moss?
I would put him above Miller Moss. Yeah, I'm actually very high on him. He had a great season at Tulane, and I know
he was very strong there.
But yeah.
So, I mean, probably the least. You're projecting the least of any. I mean, maybe him or. King. We know what he is. So I guess there's a little mix of guys, but we'll get to projecting here. CJ Carr and DJ Lagway are the last two names we're going to end it off here with. Which one do you want to start with, Lagway or CJ Carr?
The thing with Carr is I feel like we have to put him in unknown.
Yeah.
We haven't seen him play. This is his first real game, a real test. It's like, I don't know. I have no clue what I'm expecting out of CJ Carr week 1 against Notre Dame. This is there was almost to a point where Notre Dame was rumored to maybe pick up Retzlaff because of potentially that CJ Carr wasn't that guy. I have no clue. So it's a complete unknown, and I think it's actually a good thing that we'll know what he looks like week 1 at Hard Rock Stadium in that hostile environment.
The perfect introduction. Exactly. Welcome to college, buddy.
Exactly.
I just want to say I think George probably dipped already, but I do want to thank him for popping in for 5 minutes, hitting the like button. And sorry you missed it. We're talking about Lagway now. DJ Lagway, where do we have him? I think you're pretty high on him.
I'm very high on DJ Lagway. I know a lot of people don't like him because he's UF. He didn't have the counting numbers that you would think of, but he did lead UF to a very good season post Graham Mertz, his injury. When with the hardest schedule in college football, he had a pretty solid game, or a pretty solid season. So, and he also led UF to some wins against some pretty good teams.
Yeah.
So I want to say he would probably be slated right
Un-
next to Carson Beck.
Unfortunately, my laptop just died. I'll be back in like
You're
2
good. You're
seconds.
good.
But
I
yeah,
put him right next to Carson Beck. I
all right, I'll be
say
back.
that because I mean, you look at him. He had his ups and downs. He threw a pick in his first game in his first collegiate game, which was um against Miami. And then as he filled in for the rest of the season, he got better and better. I know he was in a boot entering this offseason, so there's a little bit more concern about what he might look like as the season goes on. I don't know. I can't really he's a hard player to predict as well. So once he does as he does have his first fully
Thank
healthy
you.
if he will even be fully healthy, there's a lot of up in the air with him. But in terms of true potential as a potential quarterback, he's
Hmm.
probably one of the toughest players Miami will be facing all season long in
Yeah.
terms of just true potential. He's got that potential. I know there's concerns about his injury. I know there's concerns with UF, another tough season for UF. I'd put him right next to Carson Beck because I know, at least I know I'm probably going to get out of Carson Beck. He's a little unknown, but at least I saw what he did in 2023. DJ Lagway had a good season, but his potential reminds me of Anthony Richardson in that kind of potential. So maybe he balls out against Miami. Maybe he doesn't. Like that's kind of where I am. Also, how healthy is he? That's another big thing.
Yeah, it's a combination of things you're really projecting with him. Kind of not. I mean, unlike not necessarily a lot of different people, but yeah, I think you are projecting with Lagway. Lagway, and shout out to Andrew Corbin. Lagway is that dude. From what I've seen, his highlights are his. I mean,
Yeah,
not necessarily. It's
like
not all highlights, but
in terms of genuine potential as a player, dude's a dog,
yeah.
absolute dog. Again, reminds me of the way that we talk about Anthony Richardson in NFL spaces, that his potential is through the roof, but his injuries have me a little concerned for him, and also the
Yeah,
fact that UF does
especially
have
some
another
players get kind of dull. A little bit
absurdly
of an overstatement,
well,
but like, yeah, you're
when
a little
he's
bit
healthy,
concerned.
if he's healthy, when he's healthy, I I would probably put him. I put him next to him. I'd probably put him high A tier. I probably put him the top player in the A tier, maybe
Top
even right
player in
next to
A tier.
Klubnik, because this is a
I'm.
guy I truly do believe that could win a Heisman in his career. That's how good I
Mhm.
think he is. This season, I don't know. There's just so much concern that you could have
Okay,
for
I'm gonna turn it down just a tiny bit.
fair.
I like Flagway as well, but I'll put him at the bottom of A tier because we are projecting a lot with him.
A lot of
We
projection.
haven't necessarily seen it yet. I think what the numbers were 12 to 9 12 touchdowns and 9 interceptions last year. Some standout games, but also like we said, like it could be we've seen guys with the talent and like the ability, and you look at what Anthony Richardson did at Florida a few years ago, and maybe you're projecting because it is a ideal profile, but maybe it won't play into wins necessarily. It
Yeah.
could be a guy who gets drafted high and in
He's
the future.
he's definitely a 2027 first round pick in my eyes. Like
Yeah.
he has this. I think he's better as a prospect than Anthony Richardson if he can have a season better than Anthony. Because Anthony Richardson's season with UF was so you could call it polarizing, but he was also fantastic. The way that he was running the ball and his
Hmm.
deep balls are unbelievable. But he also had a lot of pick issues, and he was so raw as a prospect.
Yeah.
You're hoping that Lagway is a little less raw. He's a little more. I think he probably is again, there's just some stuff that's a little up in the air with him that you don't know. You just don't know.
Yeah.
But I
I
do
get
like.
it.
I think in terms of who the toughest quarterback on Miami's schedule is slated, I would probably say it would be Lagway.
That is honestly fair because you look at Miami really doesn't have a too difficult group of starter. I mean, maybe Miller Moss, but once again, you're projecting a guy to get back to where we once saw him.
It's
Maybe a
between
guy, but
Lagway
as of
and
right
Jennings.
now, yeah.
Yeah, it's Lagway and Jennings for sure. It's the toughest quarterbacks that Miami is slated to have this season.
Hmm.
If we match up with Clemson in the AC championship game, then yes, Cade Klubnik would probably take that reign because I do think that he's a Heisman candidate potential right there.
Hmm.
So you, it's I actually think it's one of Miami's more ideal schedules because of I mean, so many home games. The only problem you can look at is that they play like their last three of their last four home game or last games of the season are on the road,
Mm.
and you end with Pitt and Virginia Tech. A little bit scary. You have no idea what Miami looks like in the cold, but I don't know. I think that they're. I think this is a favorable schedule. I think it's a positive schedule. I think it's a schedule that if Miami gets quality wins, they will make the committee will see them in a favorable position as we're noticing honestly what matters is the games that is it the games that you win or is it having less losses. It doesn't seem like it's losses anymore because you let
It's about proving yourself again. I think a lot of it is proving yourself against the best teams in the
Yeah.
nation. And Miami, in all fairness, we'll take a deeper look at their schedule. There's three games. I mean, the preseason teams that we're looking at: SMU, uh, SMU, Florida, and Notre Dame are going to be so key for Miami.
Yep.
And you look at where their QBs are. We're projecting. Well, I mean, aside for Kevin Jennings, we're projecting with both Notre Dame and we're projecting with Florida. A little bit of unknown there, but overall, very favorable schedule for Miami to kind of build up wins, as long as they don't slip up. And we saw what happened last year when Miami slipped up. You can't slip up because I don't think the committee will look on it very favorably, given that there's not that the AC isn't looked at as favorably currently in terms of the strength of it outside of a Clemson. So Miami can't slip up against these weaker teams or against these weaker quarterbacks, but overall, it does look very favorably in terms of their schedule. You look at it and on the high side, Miami has, on being a little optimistic, Miami has the second best quarterback in the conference. If Carson Beck can play up to where he is, but overall, you have an advantage in a lot of these QB matchups if being on the more positive side of things.
Yeah. Of the 3 games that you have, the toughest games you were talking about, 2 of them are at home. So that's another positive. Only one of them's in Dallas at SMU. It's gonna be a really good game. You're looking and you're saying that Miami's got the home field advantage. You have an incredible opportunity week 1 to set the tone. If you set the tone week 1, it can really lead to some momentum along the way. And I remember thinking about that last season when we beat UF and UF primetime game. Made people look at Miami a little bit differently, and it gave Miami that momentum. It was like, Cam Ward's that dude. I trust that dude with my life. You're kind of hoping that if Carson Beck can kind of do the same, like Notre Dame, he plays pretty good ball, or if maybe not maybe Carson Beck plays an average game, but the defense just balls out. You could be like, yeah, Miami's going to be in the conversation to get to the ACC championship. And I think, I know it's such a it's a little bit low of a bar or a goal, but I really do want the AC championship at some point in our lifetime.
No, yeah, I think that's it's low, but I mean, winning the conference, I mean, even winning a bowl game. I think winning a bowl game, some of these bowl games are looked at as kind of throwaways at the end of the season, but I think it's just important to end your season off on a strong note, regardless of if it's the conference championship, if it's a bowl game, wherever Miami's, season climaxes, you want it to end on a strong note. And I think regardless if it's a playoff berth, if it's that conference championship, or if it's a bowl game, you want a win at the end. You want the last game of the season to be a win. I think everybody wants that.
And with it being, never in their history of being in the ACC winning the ACC, that obviously is a narrative you want to change. And that's something that I'm sure Mario Cristobal thinks about. Like, oh, we've been around since 2001, 2002 in the ACC, and we've never won it, or however long we've been in the ACC for over 20 years, and we haven't won it yet. You're kind of just wanting to want to win, see more trophies, get the cabinet stacking a little bit. That's all you really want. And I think, it's a low bar. Obviously, the goal is the CFP. If Miami doesn't even make the CFP, or if they don't make the ACC championship game, but they get into the CFP as a better season, then I guess I can't say winning the ACC and not getting in because you do get in, but you want to win. If you lose the ACC championship game, but you still get in, that's a good season to me. That's a great season.
Yeah. And there's one more thing from Andrew Corbin. I think we both are in agreement. I don't think we're in the state that Beck is going to be a game changer. I think it's just getting good QB play with this great offensive line, with a potentially great running back group, with a potentially much improved defense. That together can kind of help Miami take a massive jump and bringing back up this the tier list. The wrong one. Definitely wrong one. But bringing back, I don't know why that looks like that. Anyways, but bringing back up the tier list over here is Miami or another good question. Do you think Miami? Sorry, yeah. But bringing up the tier list is that you're not necessarily asking Carson Beck to be a game changer of a quarterback. You're just asking him to be solid, to be good, and I think he has and to run the offense efficiently. And Like he might not have the ceiling of some guys lower than him, maybe as like a runner or whatever. But I think as a true pocket passer, you're going to get really good stuff out of Carson Beck, and that can help Miami be kind of match up with some of the best teams in the ACC.
Yeah, Andrew makes an incredible question that I don't know if I'm prepared to answer because I'm not confident in that I know everyone in UF's O line, but we know everything about Miami's O line in a positive way because we look at Miami's O line because they're very limited in the change that they have. We see that they have CC Maui for another year, one of the best offensive linemen in the country, and they're only losing. They only lost what Jalen Rivers and Zach Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
So they're from what we see as Miami fans is that we're going to say Miami just from what
Yeah.
we see. We don't really know much about Florida's O line, so I'm not going to say, oh yeah, it's definitely Miami. But I'm going to speak highly of Miami's O line because we know all of Miami's O line.
I think, yeah, no. I can do more when we do our schedule preview. I can do a little more research on UF and their offensive line. But as of right now, I think just the consistency of Miami's offensive line year in year out through this Chris Paul era, through the Waldmere ball, I think is very safe to say, as of right now at least, that I would trust it a little bit more than Florida's. That's just because my perspective. But you as a UF fan, maybe you have something different here. But I don't have the research currently to kind of combat you on that. But Miami's offensive line is strong as hell, so I believe in them heavily.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. But yeah. So sorry to go back. Speaking of which, go back to what Dimitri Zabin said. It's a little early in practices. We're not there at practices yet, so I can't really tell you for sure what guys are looking like, and it's early, so not necessarily the most heavily of contact stuff.
Yeah.
But you look at what both groups can be, and you're very confident in what you have.
Yep,
Yeah.
for sure. Again, everything you're seeing in fall camp is going to look positive, so you got to take everything with a grain of salt. But it's nice to see the guys just iron sharpening iron, playing really good ball. We did talk about how Hayden Lowe looks like an absolute freak,
Mm.
and the O line looks very solid, as we always know.
Yeah. But that is it, and that
Yeah,
is all for today.
thank you guys.
Appreciate everybody as usual. Um, kind of sorry, I wanted to bring this back up one more time. Falcon are getting really into the specifics. I will pass it along. I'll pass along the notes. Um, yeah, so I'll pass along those. But for now, us and our helicopter friends will be on the lines between
Yes,
the weeks. Come back next week for your next update on if Miami can get helicopters into the stadium. Um, yes, but for now, that is all. Appreciate y'all
all right.
coming out. Another
Thank you
good
guys.
episode of Primetime Live. Thank y'all, and have a great day.
Yes, we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Peace.